it gets smoother and smoother. The only problem is that somehow we don't really manage it to get the comments on screen right now. That's a little bit off.
Yeah, it's been an on and off experiment to get LinkedIn comments specifically.
It was working several times that way we're doing that, but somehow not every time. And I don't really understand. I had the same. I dropped off the LinkedIn connection, then I reconnected it, and then the comments came.
Hey, that sounds.
Don't know. I don't really know. I don't have debug logs or something like that.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about tech leads today, and IC management in particular. We've been talking a lot about product management and AI. And I grew up in an environment, like I learned my craft in an environment where my leader, like the person I was reporting to, was always technically very experienced, right? So all of my managers, leaders that I reported to, that I learned from, were always very strong technically, and they contributed. I mean, that's also that also makes me a little bit biased. But I was curious to see that the role tech lead and that the role engineering manager, or like specifically IC engineering manager, an engineering manager who is still a contributor, but it's not very popular. So I'm thinking, is it just promoted exclusively, or is it more of a shadow market, or is it being phased out due to some product overlap, AI? So that's what I wanted to talk about today. What do you think, Adrian?
First of all, I'm preparing right now a little bit of an explanation, because I noticed that many people don't know what an individual contributor is.
Okay.
The employed developer in the team. So that's
easy. Do you mean from a translation perspective that it's a
that's a typical USA used term, which was adopted in the EU. So just to clear that up. So that's actually my understanding of it, let's say. So when we talk about ICs with CTOs, we always mean the employed person with no responsibility for other individuals. So the team lead is the team lead, and the team lead does have a head count of 5 ICs, for example. And the IC can be developer, can be engineer, can be operator, whatever you have in the team, right? And that's the IC. So
a designer is also an IC, for example, a non-engineering IC.
So I'm talking about tech leads and IC managers is basically can be the same thing. First of all, a team lead, for example, is a typical tech lead. He's leading a smallest unit in the tech, so a sub-team or a team, and is basically leading ICs, while the CTO in a company usually don't lead ICs. It's
usually.
Not always. That's the first thing, right?
Yeah.
Could you please repeat the question for me you actually had for me?
I wanted to figure out what do you think? I don't see the role of IC leader. So I see it happen a lot in American funded startups, teams that I'm coaching, to use very technically versed, experienced people as leaders, rather than putting them on the people track. So I've been noticing this trend of staff engineers leading teams, of tech leads growing into some form of senior plus, tech lead plus, of teams without engineering managers, without project managers, and it's just a tech lead reporting to a CPO or equivalent.
In recent years, all the high level tech leads from, let's say, beginning from what we could call a tech lead, like a staff engineer, principal engineer, engineering manager, and especially CTOs, which was my main thing. There was only one person, and that was in America, who was not a tech person, who actually started the mentoring, the coaching, because she wanted to learn about AWS infrastructure because that was a migration target. And then we went to the topic that she doesn't need to. That's totally fine to not understand infrastructure as a CTO.
Yes.
In that case, it's the reason why you have specialists for that. You talk to them, and we went that way, and that was totally successful. So
Yes.
you don't need to. That's the first thing. Be a tech person, but absolute vast majority of people have exactly that path. So it seems like the people still think that for a software developer, the tip of the iceberg regarding career ladder is the CTO, which is not the case. It's a different, you branch away from the actual. So I would say the highest thing which you could get as a developer is something like staff engineer, right?
I mean,
where you actually help other teams. Yeah.
When I started off in the industry, sort of the sweet spot was always some kind of senior plus of, a tech lead who is also a senior engineer who is also a team lead and has product responsibilities, right? So it is sort of creating this very targeted, focused product engineering lead that is driving the team towards the customer rather than doing some kind of absorption of company politics from the managerial track. Second line managers, specifically non-IC managers, I've noticed in larger companies, 50, 100 plus people, tend to be in that sort of more absorbing effect of like shielding the team from politics. And I've always gravitated towards that sweet spot of senior plus staff, a mix of product expert, a domain expert, and technically very versed, like a technical specialist, or somebody versed in data engineering, so they know the craft, but it is not their primary expertise, right? So somebody who is an engineer of some kind, an electrical engineer, a data engineer, a software engineer. So they are running the team that way. They're contributing via process reviews, etc. But they don't contribute directly without the purpose of pairing with somebody or teaching somebody or helping somebody, etc. There's been definitely an influx of flatter hierarchies lately in my line of work. You flattened your hierarchy as well.
I did, and I work primarily with flat hierarchies lately. So I distanced myself from corporations just because I'm a very practical person, which means that I try to do everything I'm talking about on social media, these kind of things. I actually do these kind of things, which means that I want to be very practical. I want to help others and learn from my own stuff. And I can't work in a startup environment, even though we work for large companies very heavily, like in the SaaS space and these kind of things. And we help like consulting them as well. But it is not like I'm not really targeting CTOs anymore to actually help or masterminds or something like that. That is more for the entrepreneurial startup space world, up to 100 people. That is where I feel very confident. Because confidence stems from what I'm doing right now, all the learnings I have. And the more people you have in that space, the more confident you become. The more challenges you have yourself, the more confident you become. That's one of the reasons I'm staying with Flat. The point is that I have the feeling that these kind of, let's say, executives, CTOs, and they are more likely to actually ask for help because they're in this mentality, I need to get better every day, otherwise I die.
As in help, as in mentoring, outside mentoring?
Mentoring, coaching, these kind of things. And
I've always attributed that to them not having a peer. I always thought that CTOs, prefer asking for help because they don't have a natural buddy. They don't have a natural reviewing system. There is no other CTO in the company usually.
That's the typical how it starts. So for me, the entry of working with other CTOs, and that's the loneliness of a CTO. That's very
Yes.
typical.
Yes.
It's the first thing I help CTOs then is basically mentoring. Some people
Yes.
come to me and say,
Most of my clients start off with the CTO relationship, and most of them are lonely. Like they don't know, they don't get any feedback from, and they don't get any technical feedback from anybody.
I just need 1 or 2 sessions with a low price thing, and then we directly go into high price tickets, no problem, because then they say, I actually need this. I can't do that without. That's what I see. I had that in the past as well with, let's say, CTOs of larger companies. I don't know what happened since 1.5 years, but it became very quiet around that space. So maybe it's
1.5 years. That's coinciding with like mainstream AI adoption. Claude, ChatGPT, Codex.
I don't know. So it's like in that time, so much more startup happened in my life with other people, and much less corporate business.
Even less enterprise.
Less enterprise, and in enterprise, it was mostly not the CTO. It was more like
forward deployed
middle management, helping 2 or 3 teams, helping that person in particular. Not really. So I had contact with CTO, but the CTO seems to be in larger corporations.
More like
the
IT.
CTO is it is a business
Kind
person.
of IT, yeah.
So it's like I'm not the best business person on this planet.
I had this recent experience. I'm so biased about these terms, CTO, engineer, that one of my clients recently, one of my coaching clients recently switched jobs to a startup. I mean, it's not a startup. It is an electrical engineering company that builds hardware that is going experimentally towards some kind of SaaS solution. Like they are starting to offer their internal software to external clients. So all of the engineers, the CTO, the head of engineering, they are not, software engineers, but electrical engineering. So it's very interesting to see where I'm usually used to it being product and software engineering, sort of that natural dysfunction, that silo. Here, it's actually 2 different flavors of engineering that are very different. And it's refreshing in a way to see that kind of environment, to talk about that kind of environment, but to see and help with challenges that stem from that sort of, because it feels more same than it is different. But it comes with exactly the same problems. It comes with exactly the same challenges. But terminology wise, it's a complete mess.
But what I learned from when I was,
they also have backend engineers, but not for the software, but for the hardware.
It's they plan different, so they understand, in my experience, agile totally different than a software developer.
And lean, specifically lean. Yes.
Yeah. One interesting anecdote is that in Germany, when I work with Germans, we don't have the distinction between the software engineer and the electrical engineer, because one is called developer and the other is called the electrician. It's like we don't use the word engineer because it's protected. So an engineer is a specific title. You can even be a business engineer, and you need to have the engineering title, which you don't get anymore. It's a thing of the past.
Engineer in Germany is more like this doctor of medicine, like this MD sort of protected title. You're not supposed to call yourself an MD without an actual medical degree. Whereas, every code monkey can call themselves a software engineer, and they would be right, because software engineering.
I am actually a state certified engineer, so
yes, Adrian, we know.
So I'm not I'm not against the law here. Okay, just want to point out. I'm not a charlatan.
So you're like what, the chief electrician at your company?
Yeah, just mainly for the
light bulbs.
but
So
not for this.
what I wanted primarily, I had recently done this sort of introspection. We're doing some kind of lightweight performance reviews in most of the teams that I'm coaching, and we had this interesting. All the teams have some element of strong AI push, and the hierarchies are all very flat. And generally speaking, larger companies, larger topologies of teams, right, where it's like super flat, like diamond shape, right, super flat, one leader on top, and then there's a few part-time leaders that are sort of connecting the dots. So think like staff engineer, but not in an engineering role, right? So a project manager who would oversee multiple projects, a product owner that would oversee multiple teams, and some kind of infra person who sort of understands SRE across a wide boundary, platform engineering equivalent. So you'd have like a strong value stream aligned team, and then it's sort of horizontally being connected with a few people. In that kind of setup, that was like all the rage 10 years ago and even up to today. Recently, I started noticing a shift, and I'm not quite sure where it's headed yet. In that kind of environment, I was used to having, the heaviest on process, the heaviest on middle management. It usually had a product owner that was a product owner on multiple teams, a engineering manager that was only an engineering manager on this team, and a localized tech lead.
What is a localized tech lead?
A localized tech lead would be something like an architect or some kind of senior plus. The engineering manager being a non-IC, right? So a non-coding manager. And the tech lead would then be the go-to guy for architecture, like a senior plus position. And that triad was very successful. I don't know who spread that kind of setup. Maybe it was a natural consequence of incentives. But I saw that setup in almost every company that I worked for, collaborated with externally, or staff augmented through agencies. That was very common to have 5-6 engineers, a non-contributing manager, a tech lead, and a product owner who was overseeing multiple teams. And in that kind of setup, it always created this sort of interesting incentive structure where the tech lead would embody the accountability for what we want more of, and then the engineering manager will create rules for what we want less of, right? So the carrot and the stick sort of, right? So the tech lead will always drive a little bit more architecture, a little bit more of engineering. The engineering manager will always be a little bit more performance review, productivity, visibility, please use your PTO. And the product owner would just come in with like hard constraints about roadmap, etc., and sort of being sometimes even turning a blind eye towards maintenance, tech debt, keeping the lights on, and then that triad of people would then balance it out. And what I've been seeing more of is two of these roles merging. In some teams, the product and the architect merge. In some teams, the manager and the tech lead merge. And I'm curious whether you've had similar observations. Like, how did you see it evolve in your team, or like what role are you finding yourself most in? Also, if you're here in chat, if you could let us know if this is also happening in your company, that would be really helpful to drive the conversation forward.
Carlo just joined. Hello, Kaloyan.
Hey, Kaloyan.
The comments doesn't go through, so
yeah, chat doesn't work. I'll open up LinkedIn as well. Thanks for reminding me.
To be honest, most startups, scale-ups I work with, they don't. I don't know if this is generation. I think that they don't really give much about hierarchy anymore. It's a little bit like the CEO is sitting in between the people, somehow doing the job of the CTO, and the CTO is actually an engineering guy who's like the brand of the team, a little bit like that. And it's not like the entire executive levels are very often not really seeing themselves as executive. They are just, I see more leaders lately, right? So Generation X and millennials, they had the problem that they act as managers primarily, and they need to become leaders.
Yes.
Newer
Yes.
startup people, newer generations now act as leaders and need to become managers because they don't manage anything anymore. It's totally reversed in many newer companies. So, for example,
reversed in what sense?
So, for example, there are people coming to me who are 21 years old and ask me, I'm CTO of a company, and I'm like, oh, what kind of company is that?
You mean that the younger talent takes a higher title, or does their responsibility actually match up to the jump?
It's a little bit like they learned from hearing that CTO seems to be like the person who is responsible
like
for the
founding engineer on like
exactly
a
that. It is
but that's what we're talking about, not an actual 20-year-old CTO.
And they have absolutely no issues, and no one in the company does have issues. Very often, I'm surprised how many people actually working for them. It's like up to 3-4 teams in a company with such young CTOs, and there are multiple of them in the 20s. And one even was thinking about founding a company, 16 years old, and just trainee right now. And I was thinking, okay, this was just a mentoring, of course. It never became something bigger. But that's very interesting to see that the newer generations really absorbed what we have talked about, and seem to be like on a natural, in a natural sense, do what they do. So I do sometimes let's say more advanced techniques and discussions and reflections with people in the 20s than with people who are 50, because they are a little bit like stuck in their old world. Like you need to bring them over the tipping point to really like just do it now. You know it's the right thing. And then we're talking about the dilemmas. I was posting about dilemmas, and the reason was so many dilemmas with Generation X and upwards. It's like, I don't know, should we not? It's like, just do it, just try, and then we take a look. And you don't have dilemmas with a Gen Z team. They just tell you via WhatsApp, oh, we've decided that. Let's take a look what happens.
Yeah, what I'm seeing this with AI usage as well. I see a lot of engineers who are much younger interview with, a lot of the really heavy AI power users that I've seen via interviews or mentoring are in their 20s, early 20s, right? So a lot of AI power users or cloud power users are very young. But they don't necessarily make great engineers, not yet. And I've been touring this idea with, I think if you put in a younger engineer who is an AI power user and a older engineer who just, it's very difficult for them to switch their ways. I think the older engineer would pick up AI faster than the younger engineer would pick up engineering from that person. At least that's my hunch. That the AI tools are still so ephemeral that there isn't really a lot of knowledge to transfer. It's just more about that sort of willingness to experiment. And that drive is very important. But that drive is also not transferable. So
I know, but there is a specific thing to that. The reason why that doesn't seem to vanish, right? So it should have been vanished already widely, because it simply doesn't work. It shouldn't work.
AI tools, you mean?
AI tools. The point is that what I saw as well is the way how software is developed is not like when you saw that a typical Generation X SaaS company, right? Let's take real Generation X, not millennials, maybe Xennials, but let's stick with the Generation X, so my generation, your generation. It is a little bit like we have this DAO dilemmas. We need to plan this. We need to have budget, runway. let's go to the bank first, find some investors. Business, it must be a solid business. How, when is return of invest? When can we exit? And it's a little bit like totally overthought until we actually start to build something. And we are totally, let's say, enemy to anything which is legacy system, because we hate legacy systems. Somehow we end up in legacy systems. That's a little bit the story of the Gen X thing. And because we like ourselves, we like the stuff we have built, we are proud, disciplined, these kind of things. Now you have the younger generations who just come together, take a look what is there. So we have an idea. I saw there is an issue. We can sell this 20 times. And then they say, let's build something. And then they say, okay, there is one guy on the team who is a little bit more experienced and understands we can't just vibe coding. We need to have some structure. So let's keep it that simple that it actually works. It's a little bit like the movement we had back then when we have the Mach architecture, right? The composable architecture.
And even before that, Web 2.0, we had the, what is it called? Where people were just stitching APIs together.
Yeah, that was Mach architecture, composable architecture. So you had
Auth0,
you have a content management system.
Yeah. But it had a
suddenly
name.
you added up. You just need to build a front end with
it
WordPress.
had a name, like not Mesh, but it had a name.
No, it was composable architecture, but it was behind Mach. Mach was an organization, and composable architecture was basically
it had a name.
You just cover the glue in between the pieces.
In the Web 2.0 era, it had a name of like building a business by stitching just services together.
Anyway, so we know what it is, right?
So help me out.
And the newer companies basically do it the same way with AI. So they say, okay, what can we use? How can we be speedy? How can we make this our purpose? There's lot more purpose driven behind that. That they come together and they are so proud of that. They do that together. They sit there together. They don't really think about an office right now. They don't really think about big things. They are very naive still. So they don't have this overthinking thing. They just do things. And then, of course, other people come and say, yeah, but, AI slope, you will need good engineers to repair your stuff. You will need that. In my opinion, it shifted for me a little bit, I have to say. You will need that. If you build, like in Gen X software space, and just use AI for that, then you will fail, definitely. But if you build software differently from the beginning, and you know that this is the issue, and you build it a little bit more like the way that, you use testing maybe, you use these kind of things, but you do everything the AI, somehow these applications don't break that easily, as everyone is saying. So that is something the older generation need to accept on some point, that the new way is not 100% fail. It is like it's a viable way, which is in a pioneering state. And the people using it, they don't even bother with that. They just do it because they never learned how it can fail in the past. So they just do it and just heard that, we need to be careful, just test, and then we're doing these kind of things. I follow several people on LinkedIn in Germany, and
I'm very much
exactly the same thing.
I'm looking at Gergely Oros's publication, and he does like a deep dive on these very innovative startups. And every week, Gergely posts a example of a usually YC Combinator, like Bay Area startup that is for the most part very lean, very small, and mostly AI augmented, right? And it is a very, very it is very different from what I'm used to, like what we're used to generationally from how we build up businesses. I've been in startups that had like 4 people, and we build it up to like 30, 50. And these new organizations that are a bit more AI leaning or flatter, more bootstrapped, and sort of less on the
investor side,
pre-Series A side,
that actually vanished totally. I don't hear anything anymore about seeding in my bubble. That's very strange. Just mentioned. I just realized it right now. Can be coincidence, of course, right, or not a coincidence, but that's actually something that happened. It is less about investors. It's about being that small that you actually have runway just by extreme small amount of
yes.
living expenses, and doing everything with AI, and just having the most expensive thing is your MacBook and your Cloud Code.
Oh, probably your Cloud Code subscription
with AI.
Yeah,
with
because
the
you
AI.
need like 10. You need like 10 max subscriptions, right? So,
or the API one, which I use still,
or that one, yeah.
Which you
Yeah,
get
but
the
it's
email.
interesting. But it's interesting. Like that's what I observed,
like,
because in that
pending exceeded.
in this kind of environment, I've seen a total shift from a few engineers working with AI augmentation with a tech lead or a product engineer of some form, rather than the typical project manager, product owner, engineering manager setup. So it feels a little bit more chaotic. I mean, to me, that I'm used to a little bit more stratification. It seems a little bit more chaotic, but it seems, despite all the evidence of slop that I'm seeing on average, across the industry, across the research that's been surfacing through the Dora research and Linear's research recently, there are some organizations that are small, lean, and AI augmented, and they're getting lucky. Like they are just at that razor's edge of just careful enough not to lose themselves to a sort of vibe coding sort of rabbit hole.
But let's be honest for a moment, because I have an honest thought I want to talk about. I really want to talk about, and that's it. I think that all the augmented solutions right now, which are genuinely there, like smaller startups, mini products, you can see on Product Hunt, these kind of things. People came to me and asked me, "Hey, can you review that?" Right? So don't talk about that. In form of do we doing things right? I had several mentor sessions about that, right? And people came to me and we talked about that. Several mentor crews, things like I want to do that, and I don't. There was even one saying, "I don't want to learn engineering here. I just want to have your review if that what we do is actually working."
Yeah, that happens a lot to me as well. Yeah,
let's be honest. I realized in that moment that the new way is actually working. The old way is working as well. It is two different ways of doing things.
Yeah, there is
enough time.
We've lowered the floor, not increased the ceiling per se, which is unexpected.
So people said, so there were two aspects I want to talk about. First is people said, yeah, vibe coding, you won't test and these kind of things. The vibe code is adopted. They do it more like an augmented AI supported thing, and do the test just in line with Playwright or Cypress. They just say, just test it. Done, right? Yeah. It's not like the TDD approach, it's more like the AI testing approach.
I would still call that TDD, because for better or
it is
for
not
worse,
the old school practice. It's not
definitely not the old, definitely not canon TDD. Yeah,
but it's like the test is part of the same prompt and the pre-prompt, so it's like
yes,
it
so
will always happens.
There is evidence of you writing down some instructions, some specs, some behavior, some definition of behavior, which is what we would normally call TDD, BDD, but it wasn't deliberately worded. It was more just a side effect of talking to the LLM, which I'm honestly not sure how to feel about. I see it in practice, and some of it is brittle tests. Some of it does get out of hand very quickly. It's like, hey, I wrote this thing, test cover it. You quick
happened with original TDD as well. That's the issue. So it was depending on the person.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. That same effect of we can just follow the process and we can still do bad engineering, right? Like you still need the brain behind it. That happened to TDD as well. There's a lot of people who say that TDD doesn't work because they tried it and it didn't work for them. But in all honesty, based on the conversations I had and the other coaches have had, those people aren't really practicing TDD and using their brain.
You often have that. You have a team of 5 to 15 people, and there's just one person on that team who's constantly trying to be the cornerstone, and everyone else doesn't seem to get to the quality level. That is what I wanted to talk about next, is the discussion about juniors these days. So junior developers is a little bit like older generations say, oh, I'm so let's say I'm worried about what's with the junior developers, because who is training now the junior developers to the seniors? And those startups seem to just absorb them and just work. It's not like they don't care really about how do I get to become a senior of the old days. They don't think that way. They just do like, oh, I don't need to be senior or junior. I'm now an engineer with AI helping that company fulfilling the dream. It's my purpose. So they don't classify anymore in junior, senior, because that is a projection of how we thought the regiment we had for years. Newer generations they are so flat that they don't even think in generations. That's weird. So they see on a natural way, this is the leading person. This person does have more experience, so I dare to ask that person because we have a good culture. This is actually what we were praising and we were talking about for years, but actually never really got into the tech space of the older generations.
When it comes to leadership, I've been recently helping out one of my teams go through interviews and recruitment, and I saw this shift where previously you could have a very good sort of cultural, behavioral, systems design conversation with somebody. But then if you give them anything technical, just the sheer stress of having anything technical, coding related, on the interview would sometimes filter them out. For example, giving them like a lead code medium or a lead code hard. Like despite the conversation, they might fail the lead code hard because it might just be pressure, or it might just be a silly problem that you either had to study or sort of be academically just exposed to. And I saw this shift now that it's the other way around. It's very easy for people just to use AIs during the interview, and they get all of the answers right. And on paper, they can solve any challenge you send them very quickly on a very high level. They even include their prompts that they used and their Claude skills set up. They send it in the homework. They send it back, as in, yes, here's what I used, here's what I did. And the output is amazing. And then you talk to them and they appear super junior. And it's very shocking to see this kind of rapid shift of, okay, what should I do now? Like, should I,
I don't have a recipe for that either. I just see that both worlds seem to somehow work. That's the issue here.
But are you actually competent, or did we just, is it cheating? Is it real? It's not cheating, but is it real? Are you actually able to deliver this under pressure in a normal environment?
Yeah,
or is this just greenfield? Did we get lucky with the assignment because the assignment is naturally greenfield? And you're using
that's the point. You can't use such a person, right? That let's say the juniorish AI augmented newcomer isn't compatible with the old school path.
Yes.
So you can't just include that and say, yeah, now you are part of this old school, part of discipline, these kind of things.
But you see the dilemma, right?
That's a dilemma. Yeah, if you see that as a dilemma, yes. So a dilemma is when you cannot make a decision for either side because both have downsides. Yeah. But if we take it now from a Stoic perspective, which I prefer, is let the others do. So I didn't decline the mentees because I was talking on the streams we had you need to do it this way. And then I got all these requests and I thought to myself, shall I now just press decline and just ignore that and just stand my ground?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, no.
Or is it just the new generation and this is how the new generation works?
Exactly. And
that was my exact sentiment of I would have normally declined this, but this looks interesting. It's not what I'm used to.
It's not like they said to me, I want to do something, help me how to. It's I am middle in the journey and they showed me an entire application. I was sitting there and looking okay, how many people are you? And they'd say, me and another half. But he's not a tech guy. He's a business person. He's doing the design stuff. I asked with CSS. I know he doesn't understand. He just tells what was it? Was it Codex? It was telling Codex how to do the design things. And the other one was doing with Claude Code, the implementation. And worked. And it worked to the degrees that they had something which they could show clients and work with, and it wasn't crashing.
Yes.
and it was stable in updates. It just used some magic cloud provider, and it just worked. It was
How
like
do you...
yeah, just worked.
Okay, well, hang on. We have a question.
Yeah, we have.
So Abed is asking. Sorry, I really struggle pronouncing your name.
Abed
Abed.
Al-Hadi.
Yes. So it's quite a tongue twister. So I'm trying to read it. Is them having the skill or the power to fit the title and make the success? Because according to the percentage of the surveys of the startups, they don't increase 2%. So that's a good question. I think that's Abed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was the conversation we had regarding younger people taking up higher titles or just calling them CTO of like a single man SaaS startup or something equivalent. The AI reports, the research is showing that AI tools are an accelerator for the most part, are a amplifier. So if you have good practices, it'll somewhat amplify your engineering culture. If you have very bad practices, it will amplify all the bad practices. So most companies aren't seeing an uptick in productivity despite AI adoption, and most AI providers aren't really seeing increased revenue from the AIs, other than the ones that have won the hype campaign, right? So we have the Claudes, we have the ChatGPTs. I mean, ChatGPT is not profitable, but it has won the hype campaign. Whereas Claude Code is profitable, but it's much smaller in comparison. So that's interesting, is that despite our best efforts to maybe limit the slop, right? Everybody I know, most people that I work with, there's a natural tendency to just, hey, this looks like a productivity tool that can save me time, I'm just going to use it, right? And I have never had, like, the number of people where I had to force AI usage is extremely low. And it's usually older people. It's usually older, like people older than me, where they're like zero AI usage, zero transcripts, zero summarization. They never ask for, hey, rephrase this in a softer tone. They never use it for coding. They have the Copilot turned off. And it made me wonder, when it comes to tech leadership, management of a team, of multiple teams, this role normally falls to the older generations, people our age. Do you think that's a problem? About, should they be pro, against, or just have an open mind with regards to the new tools, with regards to, we usually came at it from a stance of continuous delivery. Like, the most responsible person in the room should be pushing for continuous delivery to make everyone's life easier. Like, we have enough empirical data and research to suggest that is a net positive in most settings. How does that now mesh with teams getting flatter, organizations getting flatter, more AI augmentation? How do you reconcile all of that? How do you navigate all of that chaos?
I make a differentiation between what is a company which can afford to be in a continuous momentum, like a startup or a scale-up.
What do you mean momentum? What do you mean by that?
In motion. So let's say we were talking about dilemmas and decision.
Like turnover, as in
no, just like in the idea of we are in continuous delivery and we actually deliver every day.
Okay.
Which means that that we just build, right? A little bit the old Facebook idea of build fast and fail fast.
Yeah. Move fast and break things.
These kind of things, right? It's
a silly mantra. We shouldn't be really encouraging the.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't think that, especially, then, because there was this, when Claude Code came out, it wasn't perfect, so it made a lot of mistakes, but right now, especially if you take the higher context models and kind of things, mistakes are, let's say, an exception. It becomes more and more an exception if you have the right foundation. If you build a new product, it works.
But who should build that foundation? The foundation you're meaning is cultural, right?
The
Even if
foundation is how more the architecture of a project. So
Mhm.
a startup doesn't think in corporation. It doesn't think in business and how to domainify that business.
How to
They don't think like
domainify
that,
the business. I like that.
right? This is corporate thinking. And then
Mhm.
we have suddenly teams, and then we need DDD. A startup doesn't know what DDD is, and they don't need to know that. So that's one of the distinctions. So if you don't need DDD, but you need continuous delivery, you need
Mhm.
to have something
Mhm.
with for the AI. Even though we don't want to talk about AI today, but for the AI, that is the foundation you actually need. So you need to have a good structure with how the team is using AI,
Mhm.
and commit to only use AI and not having some people doing manual stuff and some doing, it's another hybrid thing. Is you
Agreed.
either go with it and stay in the momentum, and then you control it and implement things which help you control that specifically, and
Mhm.
then it works. The problem with what made the headaches with the larger companies, the teams of, let's say, corporate, let's say even SMBs plus like 300 people, right?
Yes. Yes.
Even they had the problems that they had this, so much, we cannot deploy on Friday. We are afraid to do anything, and continuous delivery is already a problem for us. And now people come with AI, augmented AI is doing everything for us. Can't
Mhm.
imagine that. So because they have never built a foundation to work like that, they have a foundation to huge things, huge business, huge domains, huge blah blah, huge decision-making process, until you actually get to the point where the point is came from the notion came from coding is not the bottleneck.
Mhm.
A startup which is coding right now today get to the first sales, coding is all the bottleneck. It is nothing else as well than just coding. And
Mhm.
AI changed that. That's the reason why they actually developed a totally new way of working. And I can say personally, of my experience, that this way isn't wrong. It is not perfect. It does have flaws right now, but it is something we will definitely see in the future. And I
Mhm.
personally think that the old way of having overcomplicated domains will probably still exist because we need to have those domains,
Yeah.
but it won't be repeated anymore by newer companies becoming that.
Yeah.
I don't see that. It will be more like, instead of a founder is building a large empire, is building 5 companies and making multi-millions with that. And those 5 companies in itself are just smaller entities, and keep them small and keep them effective. That is what we see already anyway with SaaS companies.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a development I see. So
Mhm.
I personally think we were wrong in the last month, a little, at least to some degree, to say things like it's not work, or it's a lot of slop. I think it is hard to grasp that. It is hard to, like, I was starting with Commodore and Amiga Basic to program things.
I mean, to be fair, if I didn't have access to Opus 4.5, I would still be of that opinion, right? Like, I mean, it is those like big leaps in opinion seem to be very model specific. I said the same thing for ChatGPT 3.5 before the next generation came out. And then I said the same thing about ChatGPT coding anything before Cloud Code came out. And then we said the same thing about Gemini before 4.5 Opus came out, right? So it's more of this, we keep wanting to give it the hardest problem while at the same time it keeps getting better. I mean, the models that we
in
have
my world, the
economically.
models are not that important. So that's my
I agree.
personal experience. I
Yeah.
think the more the how the agent is work and how the agent determines things, and having those typical in between decisions.
Okay, but we're biased. We're both using what seems to be the best model, which is Cloud.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like we're using, I don't know, a home run Llama on my MacBook Air, and then we're
No,
like,
no,
okay, the
not.
models are
I'm not an experimental pioneer. I'm a
Yeah.
user of these kind of things, so I'm willing to pay the money.
The model is not important for us because we think we're already using.
I want to state that.
Nice
So
one.
first of all, I became much more hands-on in recent year in the recent year than I was before. It's actually a lie, because I'm prompting most of my time. I actually don't code myself anymore. That's first of all the thing.
Is that something you expected? I mean, looking
No,
back at last
actually
year,
not.
right?
I was seeing that coming in October, November last
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
that it is actually not necessary anymore to code. That's the reality, and everyone who's saying different have never tried it before.
Yeah.
So you can
try
build
it and then
entire
you don't go
products,
back.
and
Yeah.
the point is, in my environment, there are people working mostly manual still, and there are people like me. 99% is prompted. And it is not like vibe. I don't vibe code. I use like Claude Code is supposed
But
to
you
be used, right?
literally just use it to type faster. You don't let it do major decisions.
No, I'm doing decisions, but
Yes,
it's
yes.
like, but it is still a hilarious way of speeding up things, and because we are a startup, we need that. So we are one of the companies who doesn't have a domain. Right? We have one domain, which is by earn money. That's our domain, and that's it.
That's
The
not a
point
domain.
is, what
That's
I
not
wanted
a
to
domain,
say
Adrian.
is
That's
that
not a domain.
what is that?
Earning,
It was just a joke.
just earning money.
The point is the people who manually code produce more problems than the AI right now. So the AI is testing, the AI is meant to test itself. And the only thing which the AI often does is understanding things wrong, which can be your fault, right? And then you need to correct it. And the AI doesn't know if your change is actually destroying somewhere else something if you haven't deliberately created tests for that. That's another thing. But if a human does something right now in a grown code base, which was built by humans without AI, the rate of errors is because of the stress which sometimes happens. That's a startup problem. So you need to deliver something. Is actually higher the rate than the people using AI, because what you can do is actually using the saved amount of time to do an AI review process and do testing. So that's something. That's what I saw in other smaller companies as well, who never tested before. It's like we always were talking about TDD, and we should implement this there in terms of coaching and mentoring. They never did. Sometimes they tried, and suddenly they do because AI is there. So AI is doing the testing part now. That's a new development as well.
Here's some comments from Koloan as well.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, let's go ahead.
I bet it's actually obsolete. He was commenting on the mesh, the API mesh projects, and the seed rounds. But I want to echo on what you just said with regards to you not coding anymore, and sort of that being. I see the same thing. Now I don't code a lot, so the few times I do code, it's still a little bit manual. And I am using it more and more. I mean, Claude. I'm just using Claude. I'm not. It's the only interface that I agree with. Everything else is sort of forcing me into some cloud-based browser, which I don't know. I'm not vibing with that. So what I found is that with all the people that I agree with process-wise, so all of the continuous delivery people, all of the TDD people, Dan North, Brian Finster, Nick Shoemaker, Paul Hammond, who we've had on because of his huge leaps in open sourcing sort of his prompts and sort of his thinking framework of how to interface with Cloud Code. All of these people are using AI tools, and specifically Cloud Code agents, Cloud Code skills, the loops behind the scene, as an ad hoc pipeline. Right? So we are pipeline people. We are not deploying code unless the pipeline is green. And if there is no pipeline, the first thing that we do before we write code is build a pipeline. Is build a pipeline that will help us prove that we did focus enough on quality, that we did focus on the correct behaviors, that the behaviors are working, that we have expressed ourselves correctly, and that it is safe to deploy to the best of our ability that we can prove. And the most annoying thing, the biggest friction points for most teams about using pipelines was actually setting up the pipelines. I've yet to see somebody who is enjoying setting up the workflows in GitHub or any kind of pipeline in Azure DevOps, which is a complete nightmare if you ask me, or any kind of automation pipeline that is sort of mixing quite a lot of different families of tests. Imagine setting up a CI setup where you have different Docker images for Playwright tests and the different Docker images for the integration tests and for the internet-facing integration tests and for the database isolation integration tests and for the unit tests. That is often a infrastructure nightmare. And it seems that for better or for worse, we're not really using LLMs for their ability to code or reason or just dump out a huge amount of code very fast. We're actually using them primarily for this free automation, for this schemaless automation of, hey, what can I improve here? Hey, code this up for me. No, I don't like that. Let's agree on some rules and now keep going until you follow these rules, right? So we keep doing these sort of ad hoc prompts or skills or MCPs, but that's a bit more involved and also a little bit more expensive on tokens, where we come up with these ad hoc pipelines of, hey, I'm building something, and only for building that, I need this reasoning pipeline, and we will prompt it with each other, and then I will lose most of that and only keep the tests, which is interesting, I didn't expect us to come here. I mean, leadership-wise, engineering culture-wise, I didn't see us getting here this fast. Because most of the leadership discussions that I'm having with leaders, engineering managers, tech leads for coaching is, what can we do for AI adoption that isn't too forceful, but also supportive and helpful, right? So if we say, let's share everybody's Claude prompts into the code base, it also brings this implicit expectation of, okay, but should we force everybody to use Claude and not something else? It's like that makes sense in an enterprise, but does that make sense in a startup? What about prompt exfiltration? Like, is somebody using their own personal Claude, and maybe those, it's functioning well because it's using their private prompts or their private contexts? Should we run, should we do ML ops? Should we forward deploy some kind of agent that has access to our production database? Should we do analytics? Should we run Claude in our pipeline? These are the conversations that I'm having, because there does seem to be some kind of very tactile and tangible and practical demand for these ad hoc pipelines. They're not always deterministic, but neither are humans. And we sort of leaned very much onto one side about determinism, about those like really hard-lined pipelines. And who's to say that we can't have something softer, something softer, in addition to the old pipelines, right? Who said that we can't have Claude Code reviewing something very quickly for me, rather than having like a very opinionated, spammy CodeRabbit gate in the PR, right? So why wouldn't we do it with just a simple skill that you as a developer can run on demand, rather than forcing you to run it through pre-commit hooks, pre-merge hooks, PR gates? I always found PR gates of any kind to be very invasive. This thing that where an AI will run it and it will reject it for you, and then you have to talk to it and get it. And it's,
you need to convince it.
Right? Like, you need to convince the freaking robot to merge your branch, and it's like who's in charge here? And I didn't expect us to have these kinds of discussions January 2026. I really didn't. I thought
I think there will
very far away.
be much more change in the next years, which we cannot foresee right now.
Mm-hmm.
And but the tendency when it comes to gut feelings, I was talking a lot about gut feelings lately. Gut feeling is the summation of the patterns you have saved recently, if you were deliberately reflecting about those. If not, then you just digest whatever you got. But you can steer it a little bit.
Yeah.
And if you really follow it, and I do, because I'm in the middle of that field, right, myself, I would say it will go way more into the direction which we have said in the beginning of 2025, that this is not a good idea. And I think that will be the
For
good
most
idea.
teams. Yeah, for most
For
teams.
most teams,
Yeah.
maybe in the large corps, not directly, later on. There will be a, let's say, transformational thing later on. In smaller companies, especially startups and scale-ups, which are flat and easy and then quick decisions, CTOs sitting, even don't have
Okay, give it a moment. Give it a moment. Don't panic. Don't panic. He's back. He's back.
I never was away. No, seriously, I was listening to all, and my other stream was running constantly. I don't know what that was. I had that several times in the last time in Restream. Restream is very connection issue like.
So you said what we said about in the beginning of 2025, that it's a bad idea for most teams, CTOs, and then
yeah, flat hierarchy is like we will definitely see that people will use AI more and more, because the main issue there is speed and getting things done, testing, feedback loops, these kind of things.
Yeah.
And things like infrastructure won't be an issue anymore. There's so much PaaS going on right now everywhere. We're using a new PaaS solution with Mogenius right now. There's a case study out. It's not a big
You're not on DigitalOcean anymore?
We're partly on DigitalOcean, but mostly on Kubernetes now. Even though we don't understand Kubernetes, but it's working absolutely fine because there is software which actually does it for us. And I think that's the same thing with AI. And you have either ready-to-use products or AI which is steering that, and you become the orchestrator. That is definitely what will happen in the startup space. Absolutely.
I'm very happy that we've managed to commoditize the infra levels. You know, I remember 10 years ago, we had this whole Docker Swarm migration and discussion about should we invest into having this knowledge or should we outsource it? It seems we're starting to commoditize like the most common use cases for infra, for Kubernetes knowledge. And I'm really happy. Personally, I'm over the moon about that. That is also something that I didn't expect.
But what does have that actually to do with the topic of today?
In the sense that, you know, what does it have to do with the topic today? Well, because tech leads, engineering managers they need to make a decision of what kind of capabilities they want to build in their teams. You know, I see. We have a question.
Yes, I just saw Peter Jansen. The main issue I have with different teams is that the individual level of AI literacy, the lack of homogeneity, produces more problems and technical depth than before.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
that's a team issue. That's not an AI issue.
That's a team issue. Yeah, I've seen that. I can replace AI literacy with TDD or tech depth or craftsmanship, and
the issue is the old one.
Yeah, the issue is exactly the same as the old one.
It was really visible because the team was slower back then.
Yeah, no, but
now it's faster. You see it now faster.
This is the typical service level symptom where a team is not a team. You know, when there's 10 people in an administrative unit and they're not working on the same thing together at the same time from the same place the same way, but everybody has their own process. You know, for me, it would be absurd that, 5 people use NeoVim, 3 people use VS Code, and 1 person uses Visual Studio, and then 1 person is on the IntelliJ stack. If we have fixed processes in place with regards to AI integration into IDEs, with regards to linters into IDEs, we would generally make it so easy and obvious and so tactile to just use the preferred IDE that we've invested into, that everybody would be using it. The same way that, most teams that I work with, they're on Macs. Why are they on Macs? Because it is the most reliable and available hardware to just get a quick Mac shipped anywhere in Europe.
Work with a guy with Windows and WSL with Docker, right? In a pairing
Weasel.
session, and I asked, I just show the output. Wait, WSL is restarting. Wait a second. Now
Yes.
Docker is somehow
Yes.
not running. Wait a second. Let's take. I think I need to restart. Be right back.
Yes, and I remember we had the same discussion, right? The same discussion that Peter mentioned about, should we force AI literacy? Like, should everybody be literate in their own tool, or should we force one? We had the same discussion 20 years ago about, should we have fixed laptops? Should everybody have a Linux laptop? Should everybody pick their own? Should we have workstations of a certain caliber? Or should everybody use just whatever they want? Like, they give them a budget and they order something. And usually it's the latter two. What survived in modern offices that I work with, it's either you get a MacBook or you get a budget and you order whatever the heck you want. That's been mostly what I've been seeing. But usually the budget is such that it's enough for the MacBook they want you to buy in your country. So it's...
Macs aren't that expensive anymore. The MacBooks, yes, but the
Mac Minis are
studios and these
I
kind
have a
of
studio
things.
right now. I have a M2 Max, and it's amazing.
You will never, if you have a problem with budget, you will never see a Retina display. But
I mean, sure, yes. Retina display on a desktop is very expensive. Also hard to maintain. I had one before, a desktop grade Retina. It was very expensive, and at the first sign of issues, it was nobody knew how to maintain it. There was no repair shop. Even Apple did. I'm not doing that again.
I'm really happy with my MacBook. Actually, a 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's still an M1 Pro. It's still totally fine. Even doing video cutting, running Docker at the same time, and you can even run some other stuff during that. This is really good. On some point in time, I'll get a new one, but I would always go with that one, just saying.
What I really enjoyed doing lately is that it's becoming a lot easier to give somebody advice and then turn that advice into a prompt, right? So somebody was asking me recently with regards to, hey, I need to communicate something, but it's a sticky situation. Somebody recently got demoted, and this and this and this happened, right? And I told them, okay, yes, it's good that you sought help. It's good that you sought help privately. Thanks for pulling me in. But at the end of the day, I can help you rephrase the key message, but Claude Code can as well. Claude Code can't help you with what we discussed about the situation itself, because that's actually quite complex and human. But then taking your message, simplifying it, and giving it a softer tone, surprisingly, LLMs are actually very capable of that, right? So if you have some issue in your soft skill department, the LLMs are actually very helpful with that. If you and if it's text to text in a remote only setting, I'm aware that this is not practical if you're having a face-to-face conversation live and then you're like Claude coding that. That's not what I'm saying. So when there is a text to text or any kind of OCR in either direction. So we have a discussion, we're recording the discussion, we have AI transcripts, and we're in Miro, or we're scribbling on Excalibur. We dump that into Claude. Claude converts that into Mermaid. We put the Mermaid into an ADR in the code base. Done. 2 minutes, right? That's amazing. To get that kind of fidelity and accuracy, you don't need a note taker anymore. You don't need a secretary anymore. You don't need somebody sort of reminding people of an agenda to be like, it's quality of life. It's quite a step up. Also, when it comes to updating tickets, which is a thorn for a lot of people, it's what I talk to primarily with first-time engineering managers or first-time tech leads. It's like, hey, guys, like at some point you need to decide whether you want to run stuff from a Kanban board or use a little bit more involved tools, and then you need to teach everybody to kind of use it the same way. Otherwise, you're going to drive each other crazy. Otherwise, you're going to create a ticket. It's going to be blank. And then you're like, ticket is there. I don't know what it means. I'm going to call a meeting. And then that's just drives everybody crazy. And it's getting a lot easier to doing like multimodal. Like, here's a screenshot of my Kanban board. Here's a screenshot of my commit log. Here's a screenshot of what I did. Here's the screenshot of the conversation I just had on Slack. Dump it in and say, okay, help me update my work in progress and separate out what's done, what's deployed from what's left over for tomorrow, and what might be an issue to flag on the stand-up.
We had a conversation with a client last week, which we built a software for. It's what was a conversation on Teams in German.
Yeah.
4 or 5 participants. Transcript was running, and mid-session I was copying the transcript because I was a little bit like not the talking person right now, and it wasn't my topic. And I just took it and put it into Claude Code into the deployment, and just put it in there. Actually, just what I said, and it was running about a minute, and then it said, "Okay, I will fix these 3 things." It actually located it in the app because we used. That's something we do always. It's like we used to use the terminology with the clients as well as we use it in the code. And basically, it was fixing the issue. So we were actually reviewing it afterwards, but it was all okay. So it was absolutely fine. It was even testing and implementing it into test cases. And that was an aha moment as well.
Yeah.
While I was sitting there looking, I was running, and then, okay, it's already done. And the clients, what was done, I'll just show you. It's like implemented. And then
that's what I've been seeing as well. And a lot of discussions, coaching specifically about process in the more tech lead oriented side of things, about how to design, how to architect, how to spec out. I've come to a very lean process of just use event modeling and then dump the results into your favorite LLM, which is, let's build an event model, right? So it's for the humans. We build an event model, we get the causality flow correct, we get the information completeness correct, we get the main side effects and what is surfaced on the UI correct on the screen. We have a little skill prompt for event modeling about what the colors mean, what the shapes mean, so that it understands it from context. And then we can model together, like 2-3 devs, in a facilitated conversation, put it on the screen, and then we just dump the screenshot into Claude, and it will convert it to Mermaid and create type definitions for the major user-facing interfaces in TypeScript. And it's just, okay, here's what I have. Do you want me to create the tests? No. Let's review the tests first. Let's write them in prose first, and let's write it ourselves so we get the behaviors right, and then you can start implementing it. But it usually gets the interfaces, the structural stuff, the really atomic, like basic, like very primitives of a idea, especially if you visualize it. It gets them right. It gets them right most of the time, and that's really practical. Now, the amount of times that I had to build like an UML or a spec, I then had to translate the freaking spec into code, and then I made changes in the code, and I had to translate it back into a diagram.
And we should not assume that the relation, like it gets it right most of the time, is not in relation that we as humans got it right every time. That was wrong, right? So it took us longer. Sometimes it took us into the next day, and then we made mistakes. We actually forgot things to do. Yeah. And there were problems we were even completely ignoring from the past, which isn't the case anymore. So all in all, that is the more advanced and more efficient approach to use AI that way. So I was underestimating AI several times in the last month when I was thinking I had a to-do list, there's typical things you want to do, so you write it down, go for first to do, and somehow I go for now doing a pre-session, go with the AI, say, this is what I just got, this is my notes, this is my tickets. I discuss it with the AI, and I ask it to create a general plan. Yeah. That general plan becomes a file in my IDE, and then we go step, so that context-wise it works. And that is actually something which is working really well. So giving a little bit more faith into what the AI is understanding, because you have good preparation. So we have good preparations. Everything is like we have a common wording. We have a common structure. So it repeats everywhere. So it's not like this part is built completely different than the other part, which means that every part which is built by the AI looks very similar to what actually was there already, because that was the pattern, right? Yeah. So it's not like everything is totally off and slop. That's not the case. It never happened like this for us. And that is why I personally think we are on an interesting journey right now in our
Mhm.
industry, and tech leadership needs to understand this. And I
What
think
what
one of the things of tech leadership is that
Mhm.
tech leadership right now oftentimes doesn't have the experience with AI
Exactly.
to actually make the
Exactly.
right decisions.
Yes, exactly. And it's the younger people, the more junior people, the more sort of risk prone people who are just trying it out and then giving advice to their managers. It's like, hey, I looked at my code and I looked at what we talked about and I put it into Cloud Code and I asked for advice and it actually picked up a few interesting, red flags. Um, what I really like, and I know we should wrap up.
Yeah, I
But
just wanted to type.
what I really like about tools like this for leadership, specifically for tech leadership, is the multimodality. Is this idea that I can take a file, a piece of code, and I'm pairing with somebody, and we're doing, it's legacy code. Most of the time, it's legacy code, right? So it doesn't fit. It wasn't spec'd out. It's tangled up with other things, and I can take the code with the developer and we can go to this experience where I take a screenshot of the code and I say, this and this, we want to separate from that. Give us a code example of that. And the AI will do it. And because that is normally how we did it on the whiteboard, right?
Mhm.
We took the code and we said, okay, so structurally it's this component and that component, it's connected with this. So the before is wrong and we want it to look like that in the after. So we need to move this and move that and move this and move that. And we would do that on the whiteboard together. And then we would sit down and look at the whiteboard and try to figure out how the abstractions in our head relate to the code that we see on the screen. And using that multimodal communication space live with an LLM is amazing. I mean, I'm a whiteboard guy, and being able to, like, we used to print out code and just put it on the screen so that we could cut it up and move it around, so that we could re-architect component dependencies to make things more easily testable. And it's amazing that you can just take a screenshot of code and say, I want to draw now. I'm going to be 5-year-old now, and I'm going to draw this and this, disconnect, and that connect, and this parameter is new.
But you don't document in listings anymore.
What?
You remember listings from the magazines? You had listings and you typed off the listings and you had a game because, they hadn't.
You're old,
at the time.
Adrian.
I know.
This is what I'm getting.
It was a little bit like the C64 magazines. That you didn't have diskettes, you had listings. You need to write those listings into your editor and save. And if you weren't making a mistake, you actually had a game. That was interesting. Not a good game, but I had a game. That was a good time. This is how I learned programming, actually.
I don't miss gaming on Commodore 64.
Why? Panzer was good.
I don't know. Like that whole, you had to be a software engineer to run the freaking game. It never vibed.
I can't even remember. No joke. I can remember the starting commands for C64 games.
Of course. Yeah.
It was load and then game name, so space.
Yeah, because you had to flip. You had to swap. Right, you didn't have enough RAM, so you had to load up the OS, boot it, and then delete the OS from memory to load the game, and then swap.
That was Amiga, I think.
The runtime context.
Amiga Workbench. You had the diskette with you could load actually an OS with a diskette, but then you couldn't do anything with that.
Yeah, you couldn't run both at the same time.
But you had a RAM switch. So it was a physical switch in your computer on the back-end side. You basically flipped it, and there was a cable out of your computer, and it activated a RAM chip. But you needed to restart the computer. And better, you hadn't had your hard drive connected, which was a serial port of that size, right? You really need to, like a children, it was too hard for me to actually push it, and there were those two clamps you need to clamp in.
The large LPTs with the clamps.
That was horrible. It was 20 megabytes, right? Yeah. And you needed to park that hard drive. If you haven't parked it, it was possible that it actually crashed, like the head was crashing on the disk.
Yeah.
So you always had you needed to wait. There was no indicator that it was parked.
It was scratched.
You were sitting there for 20 seconds like a child, like hopefully my hard drive doesn't break. That was a good time, though.
Yeah. No. It wasn't a good time. Like no.
Most of the
I'm
time you were
glad.
spending, ripping off, basically games from other people,
I'm glad that I
an X
can.
copy or something.
I'm glad that I can click on a game on Steam and hit buy and install, and I have it in 5 minutes. Like that.
I basically, I found that there's Good Old Games. I didn't know the platform.
You don't know GOG?
No, actually, no. I'm a Steam guy, but I found Cannon Fodder 2 there for $1.50,
And all of the
and it
old
just
games are
works
GOG.
everywhere, even on my Mac.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like a.
I was a bit disheartened about that architecture break, that like really old games wouldn't work on newer Windows machines. That was a bit disheartening.
But now it works again, isn't it? Somehow.
Emulation got better, right? So we have various different emulators. I even see people gaming on Macs and Linux and emulating old Windows boxes just to get, the right conditions. Or
on Mac, if someone is interested in gaming on Mac, there's Crossover 24, which really works well.
it's really good, especially on a Silicon Mac. The virtualization power, just the raw power that you get out of it, it's really good. I'm using it as well, and you can also use it for office work. Like you can. If you need an application that is Windows exclusive, you can put it up.
It's wine based, so
yeah.
Really, and on Steam Deck as well. I'm surprised how well current Linux. So this how is it called? The SteamOS.
SteamOS
machines. Yes. SteamOS is now available. Will be available soon. And as far as I know, many people want to change the entire machine to a Steam machine. Actually. Mm-hmm. To the Windows machines, because they don't want to go to Windows 11.
Well, to my knowledge, most of the games that run on that need to be Vulkan compatible, which is still not most of the games.
Yeah, it's some AAA titles, but most of the others are actually working. So it's there's a good variety there. I can't complain. I don't even play the newer stuff anyway, so I don't play much, to be honest. That's not a big thing for me. But just saying that you don't really need to. So if you're a full-time gamer, probably you should have a Windows PC. But if not, you have very good alternatives right now to try to get your games there. That's cool.
Good. Wrap.
For all the tech leads who need to do something during work, you can game on your Mac now.
You can go game now. Okay. Jokes aside, good discussion.
Yeah,
I really liked it. We should maybe get somebody on. I'm getting that continuous delivery itch again. Like I'm fancying a discussion with Brian again.
But Brian is only talking about AI right now.
Yeah, and it would be interesting.
He was just posting 60 minutes ago, like the 10 stages of developer grief in age of AI. It's actually a little bit like.
Oh, that would be really fun to have live on stream. Let's talk to Brian.
Will do.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Kaloyan, Peter, the other regulars, thank you so much for being with us. We had like 20 people on Substack, which is, I do believe, a new record. Looking good.
Good, yeah.
Good, yeah.
See you next Wednesday. Thanks, everyone, and see you next time.
Yes.
Goodbye.